The sun sagged low over Bitter Creek, staining the world in rust and sorrow. 8-year-old Sarah Jane sat on the splintered steps of a saloon that smelled of smoke, sweat, and spilled whiskey. Her small fingers clutched a rag doll named Rose, its button eyes dull from too much love. Dust danced in the fading light, coating her bare feet red as the dying day. Inside, laughter roared and glass shattered, a cruel music she'd learned to dread. Then came the slam of swinging doors. Her father, Jack, stumbled out, face raw and eyes bloodshot. "What are you still doing here?" he barked, voice thick with liquor. "Go home." She whispered, "I was waitin', thought we'd walk together." His hand shook as he pointed, voice cracking with grief and blame. "Ain't no home. Your mama's gone 'cause of you." He grabbed her arm, dragged her through the dust, then let go. "Don't come back," and he vanished into the glow. The wind rose like a wounded animal, carrying sand that stung her face as Sarah Jane walked the empty road out of Bitter Creek. Each step burned. Her small feet were cracked and bleeding, leaving faint prints that the desert wind quickly erased. The sun sank, and with it went the warmth. Night swept in fast, merciless, cold, endless. Stars blinked awake above her like 1,000 watchful eyes, but none offered comfort. Her stomach twisted with hunger, her throat dry from dust. She spotted a crooked Joshua tree, its limbs like reaching arms, and sank beneath it, clutching Rose tight to her chest. Coyotes cried in the distance wild, mournful sounds that made her heart race. She whispered to her doll, "We'll be all right." Just till morning, the desert didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered closed, and the silence of the plains swallowed her small, trembling form whole. Morning broke slow over the desert, the horizon painted in pale gold and lavender. The air was still cold enough to bite, and the land stretched wide and empty as far as any soul could see. The faint creak of wagon wheels broke the silence, an old buckboard rolling steady along the dirt road. At the reins sat Nathaniel Hayes, a man carved by wind and years, his coat worn at the seams, hat tipped low against the light. He was heading home from town, mind on cattle and chores, when something ahead caught his eye, a small, still shape beneath a twisted Joshua tree. He slowed the team, boots crunching in the frost-bitten dirt as he climbed down. What he found stopped his breath. A little girl, no more than 8, half buried in dust, clutching a rag doll like it was life itself. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks streaked with dirt and tears long dried. "Child," he said softly, kneeling beside her, "what are you doing out here all alone?" Her eyes fluttered open, startled blue, too tired for fear. "Going somewhere," she murmured, voice so faint it near broke his heart. Nathaniel glanced around at the empty horizon, at the miles of nothing in every direction. "Mighty big somewhere for such a little one," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You got folks." She shook her head once, slow. He saw it then, the hollow in her eyes, the kind a man gets only from loss. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and looked up at the brightening sky. A hawk circled far above, crying into the morning wind. "Coyotes prowl these parts at night," he said. "Worse things, too. You'll freeze or starve for you get anywhere." Still, she didn't answer, just held that rag doll closer. Nathaniel's rough hands, used to rope and rein, hesitated before he reached out. "Name's Nathaniel Hayes," he said. "Got a ranch 5 miles west. Ain't much, but it's warm and there's food enough." At the word food, her stomach growled a low, helpless sound that made him smile sadly. "Hungry, are ya?" he asked. She nodded, eyes wary but hopeful. "Then come on," he said, offering his hand. For a moment, she stared at it, big, weathered, steady. No one had offered her a hand in a long, long time. Dust swirled between them as the morning light brightened, and slowly, she lifted her small fingers and placed them in his palm. Nathaniel helped her to her feet, careful, as if she might crumble. He lifted her into the wagon seat, wrapped an old wool blanket around her shoulders, and handed her a canteen. She drank greedily, gasping between sips. As the wagon rolled west toward the Hayes Ranch, she glanced back once, the desert behind her already erasing her footprints. Beside her, Nathaniel sat quiet, reins loose in his hands. One man, one child, and the long road ahead. Neither spoke, but something unseen passed between them, a fragile thread of trust. thin as dawn light, strong enough to change both their lives forever. The wagon rattled through the last stretch of dusty trail before the land opened into a quiet valley. There, nestled among low hills and wine-bent cottonwoods, stood the Hayes Ranch's simple wooden house with smoke curling from its chimney and sunlight glinting off its tin roof. When Margaret Hayes stepped out onto the porch, wiping flour from her hands, she froze at the sight of the small, dirt-covered child beside her husband. Sarah Jane sat hunched on the wagon seat, eyes downcast, clutching her rag doll as though it were the last piece of her world. Margaret's face, usually stern from years of hard work, softened. "Nathaniel," she murmured, "who's this little one?" He only said, "Found her by the road." Minutes later, Sarah Jane was seated by a warm fire, the scent of baking bread and wood smoke wrapping her like comfort. Margaret washed her hair, scrubbed the dust from her small hands, and laid her beneath quilts that smelled faintly of lavender and sun. The girl whispered, "Thank you," before drifting into the first peaceful sleep she'd known since her mama's laughter faded from memory. Outside, the house glowed gentle in the dusk, a warm light against the endless dark of the west. Spring came with the scent of rain and wildflowers sweeping across the plains. Days at the Hayes Ranch began, early roosters crowing, boots on dirt, the rhythmic creak of barn doors. Little by little, Sarah Jane found her place among it all. Nathaniel taught her to ride Daisy, a patient old mare with kind eyes. At first, she clung to the saddle horn, trembling. By summer, she rode laughing, hair whipping in the wind. In the evenings, Margaret sat with her by the hearth, tracing letters on worn paper, her voice soft as the crackling fire. The ranch hands tipped their hats to her kindly, and Tommy, the youngest, whittled her a tiny wooden horse for luck. He said, shyly, life filled with warmth and purpose. Yet when night fell quiet, Sarah Jane sometimes woke crying, her father's angry words echoing through dreams. Healing had begun, but the past still whispered. The leaves along the creek had turned gold when Sarah Jane, now taller and stronger, spotted a lone rider on the horizon. The afternoon was still, the kind of quiet that makes a heartbeat sound loud. She shaded her eyes, watching as the figure drew closer, dust rising behind the horse's hooves. When she recognized him, her breath caught Jack, her father. Thinner now, shoulders stooped, his face weathered not by whiskey, but by regret. The bottle had carved its history into him, but the eyes, those hollow, pleading eyes, were the same. Nathaniel saw him too and walked down to the gate. The two men faced each other, silence stretching like the plains between them. "I ain't here for trouble," Jack said, voice trembling. "Been sober 6 months. Got work over in Cooperville, at the lumber mill. I just wanted to see her, to tell her I'm sorry." Nathaniel studied him, the way a man studies a storm, unsure whether it'll pass or break. "You best stay here," he said quietly. "I'll ask her." He turned back toward the house, boots crunching on gravel. Sarah Jane stood frozen by the porch steps, hands twisting in her apron. Her heart thudded against her ribs, memories flooding back dust, shouting. The sting of her father's grip. But there was something different now in his stance. No anger, no drink. Just a man hollowed out by guilt and hope. Nathaniel knelt beside her, his voice low. "Your father says he's changed, wants to apologize. But it's your choice, Sarah Jane. You don't owe him anything." She swallowed hard, her throat tight. Through the wavering heat of the afternoon, Jack waited by the gate, head in hand, small and uncertain. For a long moment, no one moved. "I'll talk," she whispered finally. "But you and Margaret stay close." Nathaniel nodded, pride flickering behind his calm. Together, they walked toward the man who had once broken her world apart. The air hung heavy, full of fear and fragile hope to forces battling beneath the quiet autumn sun. The wind stirred gently through the yard as Jack stepped forward, hat clutched tight against his chest. For a moment, he just looked at her, the little girl he'd left in the dust, now standing tall, eyes steady and brave. Then his knees gave out, and he dropped to the ground before her. "Sarah Jane," he rasped, voice thick with shame, "I was drowning, and I dragged you under with me. I blamed you for what wasn't yours to carry. None of it was your fault." His words broke apart in the still air. Sarah Jane trembled, years of pain rising to the surface, glistening in her eyes. Slowly, she knelt, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I forgive you, Papa," she whispered. "But I'm staying here. I'm happy." Jack bowed his head, tears carving lines through the dust on his face. As he rode away into the setting sun, forgiveness lingered like the golden light, soft, healing, eternal. Seasons rolled across the Hayes Ranch like waves over open prairie. Sarah Jane grew tall and sure, her hands strong from mending fences and her skin bronzed by sun and wind. She learned the rhythm of the land, the lowing of cattle at dawn, the rush of spring rain, the still hush before a storm. Nathaniel taught her to rope and ride like a ranch hand, and Margaret filled their evenings with laughter, stories, and prayers by the fire. Letters began arriving from Jack, written in shaky handwriting that spoke of repentance and small victories 6 months sober. Steady work, a rented room with curtains. Years passed, and Sarah Jane visited him when the road felt safe, each meeting softening old scars. Through summers of dust and winters of snow, love took root in new soil. The ranch, once her shelter, had become her heart's true home beneath the endless western sky. The morning sun spilled gold across the kitchen table as Nathaniel and Margaret Hayes exchanged a quiet, knowing glance. A small stack of papers lay between them, tied with a blue ribbon. Sarah Jane, now 16, looked from one to the other, confusion softening into wonder as Nathaniel said, "We've got a birthday gift for you, sweetheart." Margaret's voice trembled. "If you'll have us, we'd like to make it official." The world seemed to still. Sarah's hand shook as she read the words Sarah Jane Hayes. Tears blurred the ink as she signed, the pen scratching softly in the silence. Margaret gathered her clothes, and Nathaniel laid a steady hand on her shoulder. Outside, the wind carried the scent of sage and sunlight through the open door. The West that had once abandoned her now felt like home, a land where love had the final say. The sun sank low over the Hayes Ranch as Sarah Jane Hayes stood on her porch. The once lonely girl, now a strong woman surrounded by laughter and love. The house that saved her still glowed with warmth, every board and brick holding a memory of Nathaniel and Margaret. Holding her rag doll Rose, she whispered to the wind. One man stopped his wagon. One woman opened her door. Love multiplies when shared. If this story moved your heart, where compassion turns strangers into family, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more heartfelt Western tales of redemption and hope. And if you haven't seen it yet, watch our already uploaded story. It's another powerful tale of love that refused to die in the Wild West. Don't miss it.